Hey, welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel. My name is Nick. This is a channel called Watchlist Roulette, a channel dedicated to cinema and the discussion of cinema. And today, I don't know why I feel the need to hit the table, but it's it's my 20 favorite films of 2025. It's time for the year-end list. This is my favorite video to make. Even when I go on many hiatuses where I don't create anything on this channel, this is the video that I always come back to make every single year. It is a tradition. You would not be a fan of film if you did not agonize over ranking your favorite films in a ranking that is pretty much meaningless. It comes with the territory. This is like, one of my favorite things to do. Let's just get into it and speak a little bit about all of my favorite films from this year. At number 20 is a little film called Superman, directed by James Gunn. Growing up, I didn't care about Superman. I didn't like Superman. I didn't really think about Superman. I cared about Batman. I cared about Spider-Man. I liked the X-Men. I read comics when I was growing up. I'm talking about that era, not what we have now. But this new iteration of Superman got me to care for something and like something that I really didn't care about to begin with. This film is light on its feet, and it's playful, and it's funny, and I don't think it takes itself too seriously. There have been iterations of Superman on film in the past that have made him out to be a much more melancholic character, and the films were gray and sad and gritty and realistic, and they were kind of trying to go the Batman route, and I just don't think it works for this type of character. James Gunn understands the assignment completely. He just makes a film that is fun and doesn't take itself too seriously. There's a dog in this film. There's a sidekick dog. When you see that in the very beginning of the film, you know exactly what kind of Superman film you're going to be getting, and it works. It works for what it is trying to achieve. It is like a live action full-length version of a Saturday, Sunday morning cartoon. And it's wholesome, and it has a pretty tender heart to it. This is a film that has found a way to humanize Superman, which was always my issue with the character. James Gunn finds a way to make this character, this alien that's super powered, feel human and embrace his flaws. And, it's about trying to figure out who you are in the face of adversity. And I think all of this goes a long, long way in making a Superman film that I think really works when you put all the pieces together. I had a lot of fun with it. This film deserves to be on the list because it made me care for a character that I never had any interest in. That's a great achievement. This is easily the biggest surprise on the list for me. Not even close, without a doubt. Number 19, another film that people on the internet love to argue about. It's Avatar: Fire and Ash, directed by James Cameron. I like these movies. Like, there are people who hate these movies or can't stand them or don't understand why they're important. There are people who love these films, diehards, that, wish Pandora was a real place. I don't blame them right about now. I don't. There are things in this film that don't work. There are one or two performances that I don't think are very good, that I don't think work. I don't even think I need to be specific. If you've seen the film, you probably know who I'm talking about. And the way that the dialogue is, I feel like James Cameron hasn't watched a film since 1994, just based on the way his characters talk. That aspect of it isn't good, but there's something also kind of charming about that. I don't know what it is. But again, I don't think that's ever been a strong suit of James Cameron's films, even going back to the big ones that he's made in the past. It's nothing new. The reason why he's so good at what he does is these are very simple stories and very simple characters, enveloped in some amazing world building, and it's a technological marvel. And he's, one of the kings at great set pieces and action sequences. All of the things that James Cameron does really, really well with these films, all of that overwrites the bad stuff to me. And I just have a great time with them. And in a time where we're so worried about the future of theatrical, what is the movie's going to look like in 5 years from now? What's it going to look like in 10 years from now? Are we even going to be going to the movies? These films are a giant exclamation mark that just represents the fact that there are experiences that we cannot get at home, that we can only get at the cinema. And as long as films like this exist, hopefully movie theaters always exist. I just have a lot of fun with them. That's pretty much all I got to say about it. And I think that the highest highs of the franchise are in this film. There are a number of things that were kind of question marks for me in this film, but again, the best of the three films we've gotten so far are in this movie to me. I think it might be my favorite of the three, and I just think that they're a fun time, and I don't take them too seriously, but there are a lot of people who do. So, I don't know. I just think that they're great fun. So, the most recent addition to the list at number 18, there are a number of films that I really, really enjoyed this year that I had to move off the list because I felt it was really important to talk about this one. I've just seen it. I cannot stop thinking about it. And so I think it deserves to be on this list because, when you hear a song that's an earworm or you see a film that just burrows itself into your brain, you just need to talk about it. And for me, that's The Secret Agent, directed by Kleber Mendiola Filo. This is a very ambitious film. There's another film on this list I'm going to talk about by a filmmaker named Josh Safdie. And in regards to Safdie's film, he talks about how his film is kind of like seeing your parents before you were born and kind of seeing what their life was like and who they were and where they grew up and what that time was like. And that's the way that I feel about The Secret Agent without explaining any further because then we might get into spoilers. To me, that's what this film feels like. This is a film that takes place in 1970s Brazil as the country is underneath the boot of a military dictatorship. This character, Armando, played by Wagner Moura, he needs to undergo the process of living a double life because he has crossed some very powerful people in an unstable time in the country's politics. This is a film about being a refugee in your own country and taking on another name and another identity and another job. And it's not like, the witness protection program. He's living within a community of other people who are kind of exiled to the margins of society and are trying to just find a way to keep themselves afloat, and just a community that supports other people that are outcasts in this society. And it's just watching this character navigate his new life and how do you stay connected with your young son, navigating family tragedies, trying to stay out of trouble and trying not to go noticed. Because there are people looking for you. If you look at a trailer for this film, it almost markets itself as some sort of thriller, but this is a much slower, more existential drama about kind of just finding a way to survive through tough political turmoil in your country. Another part of the film's marketing is, I think, the tagline where it says Brazil in 1977, a time of great mischief, and it is, as it is depicted in this film. And as somebody who grew up in that time in Brazil, Mendiola Filo is very much kind of piecing together this crazy time in Brazilian history, and this film feels like it oozes a great deal of nostalgia in a way that it shows you the scary parts of what it was like to be in the country at that time, but it also shows you some of the more interesting things from that time that, again, you look back on nostalgically, almost like you kind of miss. There's a great homage to movie going in this film that I did not expect. From the musical choices to the production design, everything about this film feels like you're stepping into another era. Even the way it's made, you see these amazing split diopter shots that look like Brian De Palma from the 70s, and Mendiola Filo has talked about how he has a great appreciation for De Palma. It feels like it was a film made in the 70s, not just one that looks like one. And it's just really impressive, and it's just a really refreshing film. I can't get it out of my head. When I walked out, I was a bit conflicted, but man, I cannot stop thinking about this film. That's usually a very, very good sign that when I return to it later, I'm going to love it even more. So it deserves to be on this list. And Wagner Moura, he's very, very good in this film. Even when it's not the showiest performance, I go back to the golden age of Hollywood and I think about, the classic actors of Hollywood in the 70s and 80s, and I don't want to make any comparisons, but there are actors, and Wagner Moura is one of them that we have right now, that has like a very intense magneticism about him, like a very heavy gravitational pull. His screen presence is just so intoxicating, and it's just amazing to watch this guy for 2 hours and 40 minutes and what he does with his character. And it's such a three-dimensional, robust, fully rendered character. It's just a really great performance, and a film that, again, has burrowed itself in the back of my brain. I just cannot stop thinking about it. So hell yeah. I felt like I had to include it on the list. Number 17 on this list is a film called Sorry Baby, directed by Ava Victor. This is a film by a multi-talented artist in Ava Victor who telling the story of this young woman. It's kind of like a young coming-of-age film. It kind of feels like it belongs to the movement of like millennial mumblecore, like films by people like Greta Gerwig or Noah Baumbach or something. It fits very well into that category. And we're watching this, young woman who goes through a very traumatizing event in her life, and she's trying to make sense of why it happened to her and how it happened to her and how to move forward. Among rekindling relationships with old friends and making new ones, this is a film that Ava Victor did a really great job of encapsulating that feeling of going through a very difficult time in your life. And you kind of look around at all the people around you in the world, and the fact, it continues to move. These people continue to approach important milestones in their life as adults, and you kind of feel like you're just stuck in the mud, just in the quicksand. A very bittersweet film, but also quite a powerful one. I'm very much looking forward to what Ava Victor is going to give us in the future. They are a very talented artist. At number 16, a film that absolutely needs no introductions whatsoever, is Weapons by Zach Cregger. Now, I remember when I went into Weapons initially, I was quite concerned because I was not the biggest fan of Barbarian. There were a lot of things that he did in that film that I really liked, but as a whole, it didn't totally work for me. But this was a complete reverse. I really, really dug what he did with this film. Another film that is very ambitious. And, you know, if you told me that a major Hollywood studio was going to fund the creation of this sprawling Magnolia style kind of fractured mosaic of a narrative involving many different characters, combining that with a horror film that deals with some very crazy, disturbing supernatural concepts and children who run around like airplanes. It just kind of seems like it's just kind of crazy that this film even exists in a way in like mainstream Hollywood filmmaking. And not only does it exist, it did really well and was very successful financially and critically. And I gotta say, it really worked for me. Again, as a guy coming from the sketch comic to horror auteur pipeline, kind of the way of Jordan Peele, this is a film that is very, very funny when it wants to be, and also very creepy. And it gave us one of the most iconic characters we've received probably in the last couple years, and Aunt Gladys, played by Amy Madigan. Yeah, I feel like there's not much that needs to be said about this film. Very effective, often very funny. Some great use of music. I think the opening sequence of this film is one of my favorite scenes of the year. At this point, as much as he might be 1 for 2 for me, I'm very much looking forward to what Zach Cregger does in the future. He's working on a Resident Evil film next. As a big fan of Resident Evil, I can't wait to see how that shakes out. But yeah, Weapons is another feather in the cap of what is one of the most refreshing voices in horror that we have right now in Zach Cregger. At number 15, we have a film by the name of Surat, directed by Oliver Lax. This movie, Jesus Christ. I saw this at TIFF, and I really didn't, I had a grasp on what it was in general when I walked in. When I left, it was not exactly what I thought I was going to get. This is one of, if not the most upsetting films I saw all year. We are dropped into this story of this man and his son who go to the desert, to a rave specifically, to look for his lost daughter. His daughter used to hang around these types of communities, and he is just trying to see if maybe he can find his daughter, or he can find somebody who might know something about her whereabouts. Along the way, he gets entangled with a number of other characters as they travel across the desert looking for the next rave. That's all I'm going to give you. That is all I can tell you about this film. This film, again, very upsetting, very disturbing subject matter. It is not for everybody. This is very much a love it or hate it film. I've seen many people throw a 1-star rating on it. I've seen people who love it and say it's one of their favorite films of the year. Your mileage may vary. It is one of the most unique films I've seen all year, especially if you have any interest in seeing a film like this. See it in the theater if you can. I'm kind of not sure totally what the rollout is like theatrically for this film. I feel like a lot of people are just kind of getting to it now. See this film in a cinema. Electronic music and dance music plays a big, big part in the storytelling and just the experience of this film. The sound design of this film is amazing. Seeing it in a theater was a wild experience. And going into it knowing as little as I could, man, that's the way to do it. I mean, I guess you can apply that to every film, but it definitely applies to this film. Don't do a whole lot of research. Go into it and just experience something truly freaky, often surprising, very cynical. This is a film that is just, in my opinion, just one great metaphor for the struggle and the suffering of being a human being, and how do we come to grips with grief and trauma and life and death, and the fact that there is just no explanation for the absurdity of life and what it means to be a human being. Why were we put here to suffer? This is a bleak film, and but it's just a very interesting one. If I want to talk about the most original films I've seen this year, man, this might be at the top of the list. Number 14 is a film called Left-Handed Girl, directed by Shi-Ching Su. This is a film that was co-written by Sean Baker, and you can definitely tell. If you're familiar with the films of Sean Baker, him and Shi-Ching Su also collaborated on a film in the 2000s called Takeout. This is a multi-generational drama about a family that moves to Taipei to start a new life. The mother starts a noodle stand and is trying to help keep the family afloat and pay the bills. The oldest daughter also works a job and is kind of aimlessly wandering through life, not really sure of her purpose. And then there's this adorable little girl who is often being reprimanded for using her left hand, which her grandfather insists is the devil's hand. I can relate heavily to that. I am a lefty as well. I do remember what that rhetoric was like growing up, being called a witch and whatnot. I relate to her part in this film heavily. It's just this drama that follows many different pieces of a family and their life. And if you're familiar with Sean Baker's style, if you're familiar with films like The Florida Project and you have not seen Left-Handed Girl, give it a whirl because it is very much cut from that same cloth. And yeah, I thought it was just a really beautiful film. Funny when it wants to be, very tough. A lot of screaming and yelling and arguments, and, you know, just watching everything that's difficult about life kind of come to a very intense boil in this film amongst all the different characters. I thought it was a hell of a film, and yeah, hats off to Shi Ching-soo and Sean Baker. This is a doozy. Number 13, Train Dreams, directed by Clint Bentley. This is a film brought to us by Clint Bentley and Greg Quaidar, the team behind Sing Sing from last year, which was one of my favorite films of 2024. But they've swapped roles in the director and writer's chair. Greg Quaidar directed Sing Sing, Clint Bentley wrote, and now it's the other way around. Clint Bentley is directing this adaptation of a Dennis Johnson novella, which I haven't had a chance to read yet, but I really want to. And this is a film following a man played by Joel Edgerton, who is kind of navigating earliest 20th century in America, and he's working as a logger and helping build railroads. And, you know, you're watching him grow through adulthood to being a father, to growing old and seeing everything about America change around him, watching technology and industrialization being embraced, and really just a film that quite short and sweet, that just gives you the full range of emotions. And what another film about going through grief, about experiencing love and loss and discovery, and it's just such a beautiful film all around. From a visual standpoint, this is probably the most visually striking film I've seen all year. It is. And I saw another film that I saw at TIFF, and I'm so glad that I did, because this is a film that deserves to be seen on the big screen at the cinema. The fact that, you know, Netflix bought this out of a festival, and it kind of makes me really sad that a lot of people are going to see this film for the first way on their television. Not that, you know, home theaters are great, but there are just films like this where it's like you just need to see them on a big screen. This is a film that very much feels like it is cut from the cloth of a filmmaker like Terrence Malick, just visually, just how poetic and driven by the photography of nature it is. It kind of reminds me of a film like Days of Heaven. Yeah, it's just a really beautiful film about watching a man kind of go through different chapters in his life, and just what he sees along the way, who he meets, what he discovers, and what tragedies he has to go through. But it's also about the good parts as well. It is very much about the fact that there are a lot of things in life that hold a great amount of beauty, and a lot of things in life that hold a great amount of pain, and the fact that as human beings we're all gonna see all of it. You know, we're all gonna feel all of it. We're all gonna go through all of that. Yeah, just one of the most beautiful films I've seen all year. It's I would recommend this film to anybody. There are a lot of films. I talked about Surat, how it's not for everybody. I don't know any. You know, I don't know if I can think of a person who wouldn't find something to appreciate in Train Dreams. It's a very special film. Number 12, Blue Moon, directed by Richard Linklater. This is my favorite film Richard Linklater has made since probably the end of the Before trilogy with Before Midnight in 2013. We're going a ways back. But the one constant of Richard Linklater's career that I've always loved is his collaborations with Ethan Hawke. This is a throwback to the vintage Linklater that, you know, a lot of people who love his films, all the things that we love about Richard Linklater's films are kind of in this film. They're very talky, they're very dialogue driven, they're very character driven. They often take place in one room sometimes. This film does. It takes place in Sardi's Bar after the premiere of Oklahoma, where songwriter Lorenz Hart, former partner of Richard Rodgers, who then became a part of Rodgers and Hammerstein. You're watching this character go into the bar, you know, talk everybody's head off. He is like this very small man who is not happy with his place in the world as an artist, and he's fallen out with Richard Rodgers and is pondering on the future of being a songwriter and being in show business. And, you know, if there is any future, thinking about all the achievements of the past and how all of that kind of feels like it's just gone up in flames. Romance, longing for being loved. There's a line that is uttered in this film that comes from the film Casablanca. No one ever loved me that much. And he is obsessed with that line because it's so simple, yet it's just so perfect for explaining, you know, what his life has been like up until this point. You're just watching this artist kind of trying to, you know, go through figuring out who they are and where they're going to go from here, and if they have any future in show business, and watching his former creative partner experience this huge success. He's not totally, you know, he's bitter about, he doesn't like Oklahoma, and kind of just watching show business and all of this, you know, this art form that he loved, just kind of leaving him behind. This character is brought together beautifully by Ethan Hawke. I mean, Ethan Hawke is always been an actor that I had a great appreciation for. He's so versatile and he's just so talented at playing so many different types of characters. Somehow they were able to transform him into a 5-foot man with a brutal comb over. I don't know how they did that. I thought that was very impressive. This is one of the best performances I've ever seen Ethan Hawke give. And it is, again, feeding directly into that version of Richard Linklater's films that we love from the Before trilogy. Just dialogue, 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 all dialogue, no breaks. Yeah, I mean, dude, this movie is just delightful. So funny and just so well written. And yeah, it's my favorite thing that Richard Linklater has done in a long, long time, and I'm so glad that we got it. And also, you know, it gives you the chance to learn about an artist that you didn't even really know anything about. I have a very, vague knowledge of Rodgers and Hammerstein, but I didn't know anything about Lorenz Hart. This was very much a very interesting take on kind of seeing an artist in the shadows that maybe from that era, from that scene, you didn't know anything about. I just thought it was a very, very interesting story that I knew nothing about. And I mean, I had a smile on my face ear to ear the entire film. My face hurt by the end of it. This is the Richard Linklater that I love, and to be frank, I miss a lot. And the last film before we hit the top 10 is Sentimental Value, directed by Joachim Trier. Another family drama. We've had a few of them on this list. And, you know, this is a story about a father trying to reunite with a daughter. He is a filmmaker who wants to cast her in his most recent film. You're investigating the past amongst these characters, amongst two sisters and a father, and trying to figure out if the future has any room for the past, and just seeing how these characters are going to kind of make amends and bury the hatchet and move forward as a family. This is a great B-side to Joachim Trier's previous film, The Worst Person in the World, which was one of my favorite films of the year that came out. And this is just a murderer's row of great performances down the line. I love Renata Reinsve, Inga Ibsdottir Lilius, who plays her sister in this film, which I don't think a lot of people knew who she was. I didn't. Man, maybe the most powerful performance in this film at points. Elle Fanning's great. Stellan Skarsgård, I mean, for a year where there are so many strong supporting actor performances, come Oscar time, it's a shame that his performance has to be in such a stacked category. I feel like in any other year he would be a shoo-in for the Oscar. But you know what? I think he still has a very good chance of winning. He, come Oscar night, he might be the winner for Best Supporting Actor. Who knows? So yeah, just a clinic of great performances in a very intense family drama that is just very emotionally involved. And I mean, that's one of the things that Joachim Trier has been very good at for a very long time. And yeah, has gotten a ton of critical acclaim this year, and it definitely deserves it. And that's why it belongs on this list. Now into the top 10. At number 10 with a very obvious pick that doesn't really need an introduction, nor should it be explained. Sinners, directed by Ryan Coogler. Now, the reason why I say I really don't feel the need to explain this is because ever since it came out in March, thousands of people have talked about this film thousands of times on this platform. There doesn't really feel like there's anything new for me to add. I also did a long-form video on this film when it came out. It's on this channel. I'm going to link it in the description of this video if you want to see my full thoughts on it. I was very high on it then. I'm still high on it now. I'm not surprised that it hung around and made it into the top 10 for me this year. This film is, Ryan Coogler's a filmmaker that I've always had stock in, so to speak. Ever since I saw Fruitvale Station back in the day, he's a storyteller that I've had a huge belief in. And even through all the MCU stuff that, that's not my thing. I've been waiting for him to arrive in original storytelling, and this is it. This is not at all what I expected, but I mean, I'm so happy that we have this film. This film kind of sits at the perfect cross section of overwhelming critical acclaim and great box office success. When you put those two together, I don't know if there's any original film that managed to do both as well as Sinners did this year. And, horror films are kind of where the original films start to make bank nowadays. If it's an original film that succeeds financially, it's probably a horror film to some degree. And Sinners is, but the components of it that are not necessarily horror work just as well in its favor as the horror aspects. Production design and the world building of Prohibition America, blues, jazz, all these different stages of musical evolution in African American culture, touching on racial segregation. But it's also, vampires, Irish vampires, and they do little songs and jigs, and I mean, this movie's awesome. Like if you've not seen Sinners, or you consider yourself to be a movie person, and you haven't seen it, maybe you're living under a rock. It's awesome. Like, there's nothing new to add. Coming in at number 9, Rental Family, directed by Hikari. This is the type of film that if you're like me, like, this movie crushed me emotionally, but there are also people who are allergic to this type of film, and also people who might consider it to be emotionally manipulative. I've kind of, at this point in my life, stopped believing in that concept. If you connect with something emotionally, you connect with something emotionally. I don't know if there's a way around that. And I don't think a filmmaker necessarily plays a trick on you like smoke and mirrors to have you emotionally buy into a character in the film. If you're not familiar with this film, Brendan Fraser plays an American actor who is pretty much out of work in Japan. He gets recruited to this family rental service. If you're not familiar with this, a rental family service is kind of like a company that sends you a person to kind of stand in as a surrogate, as a family member. So if you wanted to hire a brother because you've always wanted an older brother, the rental family company provides you with that service in the form of an actor, like Brendan Fraser's character. So there's all different types of jobs that he has to do, including being somewhat of a father to a young girl. And I mean, it's just like a charming, very sweet film, and at the center of it is a guy like Brendan Fraser who it's hard not to love. You want to talk about films that are like completely hinge on the lead performance, and without it might fall apart. This is maybe one of my favorite performances of the year, because without Brendan Fraser at the center of it, I'm not sure how well it works. But because of him and his charm and his charisma and his likability, this movie soars. It flies high because of him. If you've ever seen the television show Ted Lasso, which is a sports show that's very uplifting and essentially boils down to the power of friendship conquers all, this is a film from exactly that same type of DNA. Some people, again, are allergic to that. Some people are complete suckers for it, and at this point in my life, I think I am. I think if I was younger, I might not have liked this film as much, but I'm at a point now where when we're living in the 24-hour social media news cycle and watching the world on fire and just becoming apathetic and crushed by the cynicism, you need films with this type of like soft, gooey, tender center, like a warm hug or a nice blanket. Number 8, a personal favorite of mine. Maybe it's way too high up on this list, but I love this movie. Friendship by Andrew DeYoung. Probably my favorite pure comedy of the year. Tim Robinson is, I'm a huge fan of Tim Robinson. I think he's like the funniest person on earth. Kind of the perfect film for him to be at the center of. It's a film about the dangers of trying to find companionship in adulthood as a man. If you're a Tim Robinson character, it probably goes to some pretty psychotic places. So there's a scene in this film that takes place in a garage at a party between Tim Robinson and Connor O'Malley, which is unironically maybe one of my favorite moments from any film this year. Yeah, I'm going to be watching this film for probably the rest of my life. At number 7, No Other Choice, directed by Park Chan-wook. I had no other choice but to put it on this list. I had to fit that in there. But if you're not familiar with this film, this is from South Korean auteur Park Chan-wook, who, for me, has been a massive blind spot in my film-going journey. I've only seen 3 films by Park Chan-wook, and I gotta say that this might be my favorite of the bunch that I've seen so far. This is an adaptation on an American novel by Donald Westlake called The Axe. This is a scathing critique on, I guess, what we would call late-stage capitalism, and just a cautionary tale on how far, we have to go to provide for ourselves and our family in a world like this that is run by very greedy people who do not care about human prosperity. At the center of it is a character played by Lee Byung-hun, who is, he works at a paper mill in a high-up position, and him and some of his workers get laid off when a wealthy American company gets involved. In the process of getting used to being unemployed and trying to find a new job, take care of his wife and his children and their dogs, he's going job hunting to the point where he cannot find any possible work that is in the field of what he used to do. The jobs that he could find are not going to be enough to provide for his family. He needs to get back into the work he was doing, and he needs to do it ASAP. But because there are so few opportunities at this point in time, well, he has to eliminate the competition. He has to outperform the competition, but it gets to a point where a very dark seed is planted in the back of his brain that maybe he has to go to some very drastic measures in order to eliminate the competition. This is a film that gets very violent and very morbid. I think you know what I mean when I say drastic measures. This film is essentially as much a black comedy as it is a thriller. This film is wildly entertaining. If you're not laughing, you're cringing and gasping at the sheer terror of the situations that this character lands in. This character is written and beautifully performed by Lee Byung-hun, almost in a way that a Coen Brothers character is, in the way that somebody who is in way over their head trying to take on a criminal life and somehow kind of succeeding at doing it, if only because everybody else is kind of too stupid to realize what he's doing. Just watching this character kind of like fail upward, fail forward. And yeah, this movie is ruthlessly entertaining, funny as hell. As I'm getting used to Park Chan-wook, what I'm learning, at least from the films that I've seen so far, we can use the term Hitchcockian, if that's a word, I guess, whatever. But it very much draws a lot from Alfred Hitchcock, which I didn't realize, I didn't know about before I started to see his films. If Alfred Hitchcock was alive in today's time and day and age, this is probably the type of film he'd be making. Except when you look at a guy like Park Chan-wook, his ability as a visual storyteller, just the strength of his visual style is like unmatched. There's a point where it almost feels like he's showing off in terms of the visual presentation of this film and the way it feeds the story to you. He comes up with transitions and tricks visually that like you would never think about. At all. You know, there are so many times where you could use a basic shot or a basic composition, like going for a routine layup in basketball, but he goes for the slam dunk contest move because he can, because he's just so smart and creative as a visual storyteller. And as much as this film is very entertaining and a scathing critique on late stage capitalistic society, when you have to go to a seminar where a woman has to convince you that it's not your fault that you lost your job, and you have to do deep breaths and tap your head and smack yourself and convince yourself that you are worthy of existing, you're probably living in a very unhinged, unhealthy, unrealistic society. Not only is it a scathing critique of this uber money-driven society that we live in, it's also a comment on what happens when you tie your personal worth to being the breadwinner, you know, to what you do for a living, to your livelihood, to the way you make a living, and how that can completely unravel and destroy your mental state. This is a film that's really funny and really exciting up until a point where it fills you with existential dread, almost sends you on an existential doom spiral as to the way we are going in this world and how very rich corporations and CEOs are embracing technology instead of putting humans first. It's like a film where you have to laugh to keep from crying. It's an awesome film. Coming in at number 6, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, directed by Mary Bronstein. This is my favorite performance of the year. Across actresses, across actors, Rose Byrne in this film is absolutely transcendent. I don't know how she did it. If you're not familiar with this film, this is a film about a very stressed out mother trying to deal with a daughter who you never see on screen. She's always a factor. She's always talking. She's always upping the anxiety in this film. She is a parent of a daughter who is sick and trying to, you know, she's underweight and they got to feed her and make sure that she stays healthy. You got a father who's out of the picture and not really helping at all. She's a therapist and she's dealing with somewhat of a difficult patient. That becomes an aspect of the film. She also goes to therapy with a therapist who's kind of had enough of her issues, and that's played by Conan O'Brien. And this is the most stressful film I saw all year. Considering Mary Bronstein is married to Ronald Bronstein, who is a frequent collaborator of the Safdie brothers, this film is very much cut from the same cloth of Safdie brothers films, such as Uncut Gems. There are a number of films that I think are stressful on this list. This was the one that was the most stressful. I felt like I had like a boulder on my chest watching this film. I could barely breathe. It's just anxiety-inducing, a terrifying visual of just watching a character just get torn in like 100 different directions at once and not knowing at all how to cope with it and completely falling apart. And Rose Byrne's performance in this film, I can't fathom how difficult it must have been to put a performance like this together. And Rose Byrne's an actress that I never really paid much attention to. I think I just didn't see her in a lot of stuff. She worked on a lot of comedies. She's worked in TV for a long time. I did not know she had this in the tank. It's an incredible performance. Like, she should win an Oscar for this performance. I don't think she's going to, but maybe she's a close second, you know, maybe she's a close runner-up, but she would be my pick. Number 5, The Mastermind, directed by Kelly Reichardt. Kelly Reichardt's a filmmaker I've talked about a number of times on this channel. She's one of my favorite filmmakers working today. Josh O'Connor is an actor I've talked about a few times on this channel. He is one of my favorite actors working today. You put the two together, and it's a recipe that feels like it was made specifically for me. This is a film that describes itself as being a man who takes part in an art heist. Some people might go into this film expecting a heist film. I would not call it that. I think that Kelly Reichardt's films, to a certain audience, are somewhat inaccessible. People like to throw around the term slow cinema, and I would agree that it applies to Kelly Reichardt's films. Her films, to me, like the feeling I get when I watch a film by Kelly Reichardt, it feels like I'm sitting on a park bench, soaking everything in, and also reflecting on who I am at that moment. Like that is the feeling that I get when I watch Kelly Reichardt's films. They're slow, They do not move very quickly. The characters are often awkward or unlikable. And in this case, kind of like I mentioned with No Other Choice, Josh O'Connor perfectly brings to life a character who was in over his head in a situation that he thought he had well planned out, and he thought that he had outsmarted everybody. And once you realize you haven't, you kind of just have to wander through the rest of your life having lost all the support you previously had from family and friends, and you have to kind of rebuild the concept of who you are. And it takes place during the Vietnam era of the United States, in this weird like limbo of, you know, watching this character just be purposeless in a time where it was probably difficult to find a purpose, and a lot of other men were off fighting a war, and you're here, you know, trying to rob paintings but not even really know what to do with them, and really what to do with yourself. This is something that Kelly Reichardt does really well. And Josh O'Connor, I've talked about him 100 times on this channel, making a name for himself as one of the most versatile actors of great range. I don't think I've ever seen him play the same character twice. He's just, as they say, I have season tickets. I have season tickets to both of these people, Kelly Reichardt and Josh O'Connor, and I'm going to keep continuing to see and support everything they make. Right up my alley. It couldn't be further up my alley. I love the mastermind. Absolutely love it. Coming in at number 4, probably one of the most important films I saw this year. It Was Just an Accident, directed by Jafar Panahi. Very simply put, this is a film about kidnapping a prison guard who once tortured you in prison. Or at least so you think. At least this character at the center of the film thinks that they have the right person. They recognize somebody who brutalized them and tortured them, as well as other people that they knew. And now that they're out of prison, they come across somebody that resembles that prison guard, but maybe you're not 100% sure that you've got the right person. And then you have to recruit help of other people you know to help identify said person. If it's not the right person, how do you release that person back into society without potentially getting thrown in jail again or enduring even worse punishment? If it is the right person, is more violence the answer? How do you calculate proper justice when it comes to revenge? Can you stoop to that level the way that your abusers did? This is a film made by a man, Jafar Panahi, who has been in an Iranian prison. This is a guy who has lived through situations like this and has most likely seen or experienced things like this firsthand. And he gets out of fucking jail and he makes a movie about it. Not only that, but this film was made in secret. The Iranian government didn't know about the making of this film. I don't think other people outside of anyone involved in the making of this film knew about it. It was all made secret. It was all made under wraps. Jafar Panahi's been doing this for a number of years. Another filmmaker that I'm a bit of a newcomer to, who I'm starting to be introduced to their filmography. But what I'm learning about this man is that you can never silence his interest in creative expression. Again, a film that is an angry film that is just like bursting at the seams with rage. But it's also very funny. Again, there are a lot of films on this list that are surprisingly funny despite their dire, very bleak subject matter. Here's one thing I gotta say. I know people, and maybe you might be watching this and this might apply to you. I know people who won't even bother watching a film with subtitles. I know people who won't bother watching films from a certain country because maybe they feel they won't be able to relate to the culture, or that they won't understand what's going on. I'm not sure. Maybe they think that international films are boring. If this applies to you and you don't like watching films with subtitles, I'm not going to shame you. But this film, I don't think I can count on one hand 5 films made in America in the Hollywood system this year that are half as entertaining as It Was Just an Accident is. This is a film, it's not a long film, it's under 2 hours, probably $1.45. It starts, it grabs you by your collar, drags you right in, never lets you go, you blink and it's over. This is a film that moves at unbelievable pace, twists and turns every 5 minutes, not to mention the best ending I've seen to any film this year. You want to talk about great endings to a film? This is like a mic drop from the ceiling. This movie's like exhilarating to me. And in terms of Jafar Panahi continuing to tell stories, and this is probably the biggest success of his career. I don't think any other film has received as much mainstream attention. Dude, good for him. This guy's like a new hero to me. So yeah, amazing film. Number 3, Eddington, directed by Ari Aster. Eddington is a film about the current day United States, specifically 2020, right when the pandemic pretty much made landfall, where you couldn't enter a grocery store without a mask, which Sheriff Joe Cross, played by Joaquin Phoenix, is not a fan of. And this is a film about the political divide in America that has heated up since the pandemic and really has not gone away or simmered down. It's only ratcheting up even more and more and more every day. Pretty much right-wing sheriff turned politician with the police force behind him who knows nothing about running for office versus Pedro Pascal, who I think it's safe to say is somewhat of a centrist, posing as a liberal, trying to kind of virtue signal his way to looking like a good guy, even though he's not totally. In the middle of it, you've got the pandemic kicking off, all of that sending this small town of Eddington, New Mexico into total panic. You've also got the topic of murder by police, police brutality, the Black Lives Matter movement coming into play, the 24-hour social media news cycle with living on your phone and inside your phone all the time to where you become detached with reality. Characters related to Joaquin Phoenix's character, and really even more people around the town, falling down the social media conspiracy theory rabbit hole. This film is just one giant powder keg ready to burst with all of these aspects of American society on full display. There is nothing subtle about this film. It is as subtle as a brick to the face, like just getting bludgeoned with a brick to the face. I mean, I believe Eddington is a satire. And satire is such a difficult genre because you have to walk a tightrope of if you go too far, you can annoy or alienate the audience, or you've already proved your point and now you're just dragging your feet. Or you don't go far enough and you're kind of pulling your punches. You got to walk a tightrope, and it's very thin line, and you got to kind of strike a balance. Ari Aster pushes this film completely into the red. Like, he goes completely overboard. But he's such a provocative, I guess, like emotionally engaging filmmaker where all his films just get a very intense, visceral reaction out of you because of the shocking things that he does. Him and his style fit very, very, very well for this type of film, in a way that, although it is not subtle and it can often be over the top and in your face, it's never wrong. This is one of my favorite performances from Joaquin Phoenix, one of my favorite characters he's made, a very complicated character in Sheriff Joe Cross. This is one of my favorite things he's done in a long, long time. Ari Aster is one of my favorite filmmakers. He never fails to produce original films that nobody else would think of doing. Eddington is a film that truly never wants you to forget about how crazy it got and how crazy it is where we're heading. Number 2. Marty Supreme, directed by Josh Safdie. Josh Safdie and his brother Benny, as the team of the Safdie brothers, have been two of my favorite filmmakers ever, pretty much. They've been on an unbelievable roll of masterpiece after masterpiece. Both Good Time and Uncut Gems are two of my favorite films of all time. Their style and their mode of storytelling and the characters that they want to tell stories about. It is a style of filmmaking that in today's day and age feels very unique and very refreshing, a throwback to, I would say, 70s, 80s American cinema. They have had a huge influence on me. With Good Time, Uncut Gems, and Marty Supreme, these are all films about unlikable characters, downright bad people, who have a vision for a purpose or, a great belief that they have, and they go to any possible length they can to achieve it, even if it means destroying themselves and everyone around them and everything around them. Marty Mauser is a character who, the thing that's different about him from previous characters like Howard Ratner from Uncut Gems is the fact that Marty is a young guy trying to figure out adulthood and how to fit his dream into adulthood. And to me, this is a film about, a film like Uncut Gems is about a degenerate gambler just destroying himself. It's about addiction. But to me, this is like a coming-of-age film about what it means to grow up and what it means to dream big, as the tagline says. There's even a needle drop for the Corgis track. Everybody's got to learn sometime. And, at some point, Marty Mauser's character is going to have to learn how to be an adult. He wants to be a professional table tennis player. We're not going to call it ping pong. All right? And he wants to be the best in the world. But at the same time, he has a romance back home where he may or may not be part of expecting a child. He has a mother to take care of. All these real life responsibilities. A job where he's going to get a promotion, but he's going to turn it down in order to do what he wants. This is a film about weighing up how much do you want your dream, and are you willing to sacrifice all these different things in order to get it? What happens when you do? What happens when you're poor and you have no money because you have no real life responsibilities and you need to find a way to fund your dream and all the dangerous situations you might get into in doing that? This is a film about being young and wild and having to face the music of what it means to be a grown-up and embrace real life. And if you're a young, ambitious person with whatever dream it is you have, eventually the walls of real life are going to close in on you. It might be bills to pay. It might be rent. Putting food on the table for yourself, for your family, having children. Marty kind of walks around this entire film with a chip on his shoulder, kind of almost believing that he's the only one who's ever been a dreamer. And, he's surrounded by real life people who, You can't see it, but maybe they had an ambition one day too, and maybe they followed through with it and got what they wanted, and maybe they just ended up living a normal life like the rest of us. At some point, he's going to learn that it's probably going to happen to him too. He's probably going to grow up, and the dream is either going to happen, or it's probably going to get crushed, or he's going to have to give it up. And this film is essentially a race against time to do what it is you want to do and be who you want to be before life crushes you and crushes a dream. Marty Mauser kind of just has to be a really shitty person in order to get what he wants, and Marty Supreme is a tale about what that looks like. Everything about the way the Safdie brothers films are made, I mean, every single aspect of their films are made exactly the way I want a movie to be made, man. Like, Daniel LaPatton's score is perfect. Somehow the use of new wave 80s music fits perfectly to, this kinetic, anxiety-driven style of the Safdie brothers films. The way that Josh Safdie casts, real-looking people in his films. When you look at people who work at bars or bowling alleys, they look like they work there. There's nothing uncanny or Hollywoodized about his films. That's why they feel like they come straight out of the 70s. Then you've got unconventional casting choices like Kevin O'Leary. I'm a Canadian. I have quite strong opinions about a guy like Kevin O'Leary. They're not positive opinions, but the guy's perfect for the character he plays. And surprisingly enough, he might have my favorite line of dialogue in the entire film. Timothée Chalamet's performance is the best performance of his career, and he finally has like an iconic character that he can call his own, not attached to franchise filmmaking. This is like one of your legacy performances that you hang your hat on when you call it a career. You might end up being known for this character for the rest of your life. I absolutely adore this film. I can't wait to see it again. Dream big. Anyway, coming in last but not least, at number 1, at this point, it's probably obvious what it is. One Battle After Another, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul Thomas Anderson is my favorite filmmaker. Favorite living filmmaker? Probably favorite all-time filmmaker? Of course this film is at number 1. It's amazing when you see a guy who's made so many incredible films that have shaped your love for cinema. When you see him do new things, when you see him do different things, when you see him do things that you didn't know he could do. This is the funniest film he's ever made. In terms of big set pieces and the action blockbuster aspect of it, the action adventure aspect of it, plenty of stuff in terms of practical stunts and the set pieces that I didn't know PTA could do, but of course he's good at it. I'm just going to start rifling off reasons why this is number 1. Just like it's number 1 on so many other people's lists. If you've watched these best of the year lists, this is a film where, again, there's not much more to be said. I'm just going to start rifling off all the things I love about this film. This is my favorite performance by Leonardo DiCaprio. This is my favorite character he's ever played. Teyana Taylor, who has, not a huge amount of screen time, but when she is on screen, this is her film completely. Like a giant, an unbelievable presence that cannot be ignored. She's amazing. Sean Penn crafts an incredible villain in Stephen J. Lockjaw, who is pretty much representative of every member of the current Trump administration. Benicio del Toro is the kind of sidekick character. I just watched Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid for the first time not too long ago. There's like a Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid element between Bob Ferguson, played by Leo, and Sensei Sergio, played by Del Toro, in a way. Like a buddy adventure type film. Sensei Sergio is a character that I would follow into the gates of hell. This film is very prescient and very on the nose and urgent about the current state of America. This film, when I saw it in September, it felt like it was filmed the week before. Everything about this film speaks to the current state of what we are experiencing in this world. It's just crazy, explosive, urgent, balls to the wall, action, adventure, drama, thriller, comedy, social satire, all wrapped in one. Almost like a modern Western, almost like, I know, if a guy like John Ford was still around in today's day and age, this is the type of film he would be making. These are the types of films that get heralded as modern classics, and you know what? It deserves it. I know I'm really kind of kissing up to PTA because he's my favorite filmmaker, but that's just the way I feel about this film. And this is the odds-on Best Picture winner, at least predicted to be the Best Picture winner. It will be well deserved, assuming it happens. I never count my eggs before they hatch, but it looks like that's the route we're going. If this is the film that we all remember 2025 for, then I'm okay with that. It's the indication that it has been a hell of a year, maybe the best we've had since the 2020 pandemic. It's probably my favorite film year since 2019 when we had a bunch of big hitters. And One Battle After Another. It is my favorite film of the year, like a lot of people. I know people are starting to, there are some people turning on it a little bit, calling it a little bit overrated. I disagree. I will never understand that. Yeah, this is my favorite film of the year. And in terms of the 2020 decade so far, we're halfway through in 2025. This is arguably my favorite film of the decade thus far. There was no other place to put it. You could say I had no other choice. That's stupid. Anyway, all right. That's it, everybody. Thank you for watching. If you've made it to the end of this video, I respect you and I greatly appreciate you coming to check out the video. It's been a long time since I've made anything. After this, I want to move on and just start working on creating more, whether it's here on YouTube or on some other platform, whether it's in the form of videos or podcasting or something. My goal this year is to get back to regular programming and just work on creating as much as I can. And hopefully you'll join me for that. If you like this video, you can hit the like button because I think that does something positive for the growth of this channel. If you want to subscribe for more like this, you know what to do. You can hit the old subscribe button. And if you have your favorite films of 2025, if you have your own list, feel free to drop them in the comment section, man. I'm always interested to see, what everybody loved from this year. It's like my favorite time of year to catch up with what everybody's enjoying, and maybe there are some hidden gems that I don't know about that you could turn me on to. That's great too. Another great year, and let's hope 2026 is just as good. That's it. That's all I got. I hope you take care of yourself, and I'll see you later.